Right, well, first things first. I've been away for a few weeks. I've kind of done some help videos, but not much in the way of opinion. And so I thought I'd sit down today and give you my opinion about Microsoft and where I think they might be heading or not, as the case may be. Now, obviously, just over a week ago, last Sunday, we had Gamescom and Microsoft doing their big announcement, such as it was. And I have to say, it was, well, pretty underwhelming, wasn't it? Let's be honest. I thought E3 was pretty poor this year, and hardware aside, I thought Microsoft were pretty poor there. The only people who really came out of that looking any good at all, I think, were Nintendo, which was surprising for me, but there you go. It is what it is. Unfortunately, Gamescom for Microsoft was even worse. Because again, it was, well, the hardware was all right. And I have to state now, pretty clearly, that I've pre-ordered an Xbox One X. Part of me does wonder why I've ordered an Xbox One X, but we'll get to that in another video. What I want to talk about here is where Microsoft are going. I have a real problem here because I've sat fast and I've looked at what Microsoft are doing and I've heard the voices from, Redmond, and I've listened to what Phil Spencer's had to say. And a lot of what Phil Spencer's had to say has been bloody good. The stuff about backwards compatibility, I don't buy Sony's line on that. I think that backwards compatibility is a fan service and it will help to sell consoles. Even if people don't use backwards compatibility that often, they will want to have it. If you look at the growth in retro gaming, a lot of people buy retro games and those games sit on their shelves and they occasionally play them. They don't play them that often, but they want to have the opportunity to play them when they want to play them. So backwards compatibility gives a kind of taster of that for people like me who aren't going to spend an awful lot of time and money building a collection because, frankly, we haven't got the space. So I think backwards compatibility is a good thing, and I've made a video about that in the past. I think Game Pass is a great idea. I welcome some of the changes they've done to the UI, and I did a video about that as well. And so I think in terms of the UI, I think in terms of the service they're providing, I think in terms of their online service, I think the hardware that they're providing with the Xbox One X, I think all that's great. But none of that is worth diddly if you're not putting out games. And I know some people will argue that they're going to get the best versions of the third-party games. And that is going to be true. The fact of the matter is that the Xbox One X is a pretty big step up, much bigger than the PlayStation 4 Pro. And I own a PlayStation 4 Pro, and I enjoy the PlayStation 4 Pro. And I do think it comes into its own somewhat with virtual reality. But it does offer a slight boost in game performance and a slight boost in graphical performance. But I don't think it comes anywhere close to what the Xbox One X is going to provide us. So, I haven't got an axe to grind with Microsoft over the power of the Xbox One X. And I also think they're going great guns with, things like the controllers and stuff like that. I think the special editions, I know not everybody likes that, but I think that it keeps their presence in the marketplace, and it also gives people something to own, to enjoy. I'm a guy from the record collecting era. I used to like collecting records, and I love having records in my hand. I love the smell of them. Same with books. I love the smell of books rather than a Kindle. I read books digitally as well, but I like to have that tactile thing. And so the hardware, the special edition hardware and the controllers and the design labs and all that kind of stuff, I've got no problem with that, and I think it's a great idea, and it gives people something that they can choose to engage in, to indulge in, if you like, that they don't have to buy the special edition controllers, they don't have to go to Game Labs, they don't have to buy the special edition Xboxes. But, as I say, you can do all that, and it can be all brilliant, and I'm very happy with all that. But without the games, it's nothing. It stands for nothing at all. And if you look at Xbox this year, it's been woeful. I mean, so far we've had, Halo Wars 2? And, I've dabbled with Halo Wars 2. My boy wanted to have a look at it, so I got it for him. And we've sat and played it together a little bit, but not an awful lot. And I really like RTS games. In the past, I used to play them a lot. They're a bit of a time sink, so I don't get to play them much these days. But, it's a decent game. I think it's okay. I'm never going to be that good at it. But yeah, it's an okay game. And then we've got Forza 7 coming out at the end of the year. Now, that's debatable whether that's a system seller. I mean, I'll be honest, I've always thought that racing games are pretty good as system sellers because they show off what the console can do in terms of the graphical fidelity and whatnot. And if you look at Forza, it's offering 4K at 60 frames per second. So it's going to be pretty spectacular. But it's not everybody's cup of tea. And if you're going to release a new console or a iteration, if you like, then you do need something to play on it. This is a double-edged sword too, because I think Microsoft have made great strides with doing updates for existing games like Halo and Gears and Forza Horizon. And a lot of games, if you look at the catalogue of games that are going to be patched, first and third party, that's pretty good. And, for somebody who hasn't got an Xbox, that's pretty good as well, because it means they can go out and buy an Xbox One X and they will have those games readily available more or less from day one. So that's good, as is Game Pass. I think Game Pass, and including a short subscription to it in the box, is a good idea because it gives people some games to play out of the box without them even needing to go and buy one. But, nevertheless, we still have the elephant in the room, and that's the lack of first-party games beyond Forza. As I say, not everybody's going to want to buy Forza, and when you release a new console, you are going to want to put out 2, maybe 3 games that are going to get people interested and want to buy the system. Corrupt Clay, who is another YouTuber and a guy that I've mentioned before on my channel, and we talk quite a lot, he's just done a video talking about why he hasn't ordered an Xbox One X. And, I think he's taking the sensible path in a way. He's held off and he wants to see what's coming next year. And, there are some games coming next year. Obviously, we've had quite a few cancelled this year, and that's going to make next year look somewhat better for Microsoft, I think. And I have to say as well that there wasn't a great deal released for the PlayStation 4 Pro when it came out. There were some good games that came out for PlayStation last year, but they didn't really release much at the end of the year for the PlayStation 4 Pro. So Microsoft find themselves in a similar situation there, and I don't think that we should be too hard on Microsoft if we're not going to do the same thing for Sony. And, I was quite critical of Sony. But going back to Clay and what he said about, not buying one up front, I do think he was right in some respects. I'm not as sensible as him, and I have pre-ordered one, partly because, unlike him, I am a big fan of the Forza games. And I know some people have some issues with Forza, and I personally do, but I still enjoy the experience of those games. And I think it will look pretty spectacular, and it's a Forza game, so it will play pretty well as well, hopefully. Then we've got Sony are coming out with Gran Turismo Sport, and that's going to be a VR game. So if you're into VR, maybe you're going to be looking at, well, do I get a VR headset and Gran Turismo Sport, or do I buy an Xbox One X? Well, at the moment, it looks like the Xbox One X is selling great guns. But, as I said before, when I was looking at the Nintendo Switch, people can't go on about how well it sells in the first couple of weeks or the first couple of months or even the first 6 months. You're looking a year and 3 years down the line, and maybe even 5 years down the line, to see how well a console does over its lifetime. And if I'm going to be critical of Nintendo and say to Nintendo fanboys, hold on a minute, let's wait and see, I have to say the same thing about the Xbox One X. And at this stage, early sales mean nothing. It's a good start, as it was with the Switch. But, it could tail off very rapidly after Christmas once the hardcore have got their Xbox One X's. And from a marketing point of view, I think the Xbox One X Scorpio edition was a good idea. A lot of people don't like the idea, and they've had a go at Microsoft over it. And I can see that perspective, I suppose. But I haven't got a problem with that. It's got Scorpio edition written in green on it and written on the controller as well. It's basically a day one edition. It's kind of a fan thing for people who want to have that. I mean, personally, and I said this, I think I put this on Twitter, that for me, I would have liked to see the Scorpio logo that they had when they were developing Scorpio. I would have liked to have seen that embossed on the top of the console. That would have made it something special. But as I say, I'm waiting and I'm looking and I'm thinking, well, what are Microsoft going to be offering down the line? We've had some worrying noises out of Microsoft recently about not concentrating on first party, which incidentally flies in the face of stuff that Phil Spencer has said in the past. If you look at what Phil Spencer has said in the past, he's actually said we are spending as much time and energy on the software as we have done on the hardware. We've done the hardware, we've done the Xbox One S, and now we're looking at the Xbox One X, and now that's out of the way, we can concentrate on the software, and we are going to put as much energy and effort into the software. So the most recent noises we've been getting that they're not so engaged with first-party production, it's worrying. If, as Phil Spencer has said, they don't want to get into this thing of limiting the ability for other consoles to have content. So they're not going to do marketing deals that stop people being able to get games. I think from a gamer's perspective and from a moral perspective, that's great. But it's not going to help the Xbox very much, is it? Sony are doing deals for third party, and they're putting out, a whole raft of first party product at the moment. And Microsoft simply can't compete. And putting out a great piece of hardware is one thing. And I do think it is a great piece of hardware. And I've said this earlier on, and I know people are going to argue with me. And if you're a Sony fanboy and you don't like me saying that, then I'm sorry, but tough. It's going to be the most powerful console out there. And there is no argument about that. And it will be a considerable difference, as far as I can tell, from what we've seen from Digital Foundry and other people. Whether you'll notice it or not yourselves, and whether, as I've said before, when you're actually in the middle of a game playing it, whether that level of graphical fidelity is going to make a difference to you, throw a coin, decide for yourself, I don't know. But it is going to be a more powerful console. So the Sony people have to accept that. Okay, that's a given now. We know the specs, we know the hardware, we know it's a much more powerful console. Microsoft, as Sony last year, didn't do themselves any favours by over-egging the pudding somewhat and going on about it was a true 4K device, because although an awful lot of the games that are going to come out are going to be 4K 30, which incidentally I said at E3 2016, I said it'll manage 4K, but it's not going to manage 4K 60 for most games, and lo and behold, here we are now. And it's 4K 30 for most games, with the occasional game running at 4K 60 and some games dropping down and having to use things like checkerboard rendering to bring it up to 4K. Nevertheless, the base resolution on the Xbox One X is going to be better than the PlayStation 4 Pro. So let's not get into an argument about that, because it's a pointless argument. It is the most powerful console in the same way that the PlayStation 4 Pro was the most powerful console last year. The difference being is that the leap is bigger for the X1 X. But I come back again. Games, 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 games and games. I love my Xbox. I really do. I've liked playing with the Xbox for years now. I had the original Xbox. It was my first console, really. I used to play console games around other people's houses, but I was always a PC gamer. And those of you who watch my channel regularly know that about me. But I've always really enjoyed playing the Xbox. And when Halo came out on the original Xbox, it was a groundbreaking game. It was a game changer. Excuse the pun. But it was a game changer. And it brought in a whole new way of controlling games. Well, we need something like that now. You know, when Microsoft talk about the Xbox, and they've called it the Xbox One X because it abbreviates to Xbox. And the idea is it's harking back to the direct Xbox and this idea that it was going to be a powerhouse of a gaming machine. Yeah, it was. It was a powerhouse of a gaming machine when it was released. It was the first gaming console to really offer viable online play. It was the first gaming console to have a hard drive. It offered a control mechanism for first-person shooters that we'd never seen before that actually bloody well worked. And so it was a groundbreaking console when it released. And so if the Xbox One X is going to hark back to that, it has to do similar things. It has to have games that are going to release on it that are going to make people go, oh, wow, that's amazing. If they want to grab that crown, if they want to be held in that same esteem that a lot of us held the original Xbox in, and then subsequently the 360 to a lesser degree, then they need to do something like that. And, they may be bringing us something like that down the line, but the noises aren't encouraging. And Phil Spencer's saying that they're going to focus on the games now. Well, if they're only just focusing on the games because they've got the hardware out of the way, we're not going to see games until 3 years' time. And by then we'll be looking at the next generation. Sony will have the PlayStation 5 out or imminent by then. So I don't know. I do worry a little bit at this stage. I'm really pleased about the backwards compatibility. I'm really pleased about Game Pass. I'm really pleased about all the games that are going to be patched for the system, all those things. But I want to see some effort made to get us some first or even third party that is unique to the Xbox. We need some of that. And when I say unique, I'm not one of these people who worries too much about the games being made available on PC because, okay, there is some crossover between console and PC, but often there's a lot of people out there who don't have PCs who just want to play on console, and that's fine. I have both. I still want the Xbox One X because I still like to play in the lounge. And I don't think you can underestimate that. People like me who like to play games, sometimes I like to sit in the office and shut the door and be on my own. And other times I like to sit in the lounge with my boy and play with him. And being able to play with the highest possible fidelity is an attractive proposition for me. So, I don't know, maybe I am a unique or rare individual. But I think there's a lot of people out there like that. And people have always wanted to have power and good graphics and good sound. And those things add to the experience. Okay, I'm rambling, but the point is here really that from somebody like me who has been a fan of Xbox for some years, I'm looking at their catalogue, I'm looking at the games that are coming, and we're getting a few early next year, early to mid next year that should have been out this year, like Crackdown and like State of Decay 2 and games like that. And obviously we're going to be getting Sea of Thieves. That's coming as well. But these games should have come this year. So I don't know, maybe we're going to get a sort of concertina effect and there's going to be a whole load of games squeezed into next year. And maybe at E3 next year we'll get some announcements of some games that are coming at the end of the year. Phil Spencer has said that he doesn't want to announce things too far in advance. So that's kind of my only hope at this stage, is to hold out and think maybe they are working on stuff and maybe they're just keeping it close to their chest. But I've reached a point where we get Gamescom where they say, oh, it's the best gaming lineup. We've got all these games for you. And they just basically rehash what they gave us at E3, which wasn't particularly inspiring in the first place. And it makes me sort of take a breath and pause and think, are you just trying to pull the wool over our eyes? I suppose time will tell. We'll see. But what do you guys think? I've gone on enough. I think it's time for you guys to let me know what you think. Do you think Microsoft are working on games? Do you think that we will get some first party? Do you think they should be spending a bit more money to get some exclusivity in the third party market? As I said before, I do agree with Phil Spencer. We shouldn't be stopping third party games from going to other systems. I think that's just wrong. But they do need to do some sort of marketing deals, and they need to spend some money on their own first party. Another one here, and I'll just touch on this now because I'd like to make another video about this, but I get the feeling that there's something wrong with the culture at Microsoft. Because they make a game, it doesn't sell great, so then they ditch it. Well, if you look at a lot of games, they start to sell really well with their second and third iteration. They build a fan base. You get that in the book market and the film market and the TV market. If you stick with a product for a little while, it'll build a fan base. And then when you build a fan base, you get it growing and they spread it to their friends and their family. And so if you look at the original Star Trek, it was cancelled after 3 seasons. Everyone thought it was dead. And then it came back in the 70s. And look at it now. It's a huge franchise. And they're just about to get another season of a new series based around Star Trek. So I do think that maybe we need a bit of a change in culture at Microsoft. If there hasn't been already, let's hope there has been. And they need to, look at their developers and let them do their work and then give them a second chance. Because often, as I say, it's the second and third game that really hit. I mean, the one that springs to mind is the obvious one, would be the Nathan Drake games. Uncharted 1, okay, but it really hit its stride with Uncharted 2. And you see this a lot. So anyway, digressing again, but The point is that Microsoft needs to do something to get us some games that we can play. And I don't know whether you guys agree with me or not. Maybe I'm talking crap. But come and let me know in the comments. As I say, I've gone on enough now. This is just one straight off the top of my head. It's not planned at all. There's no script or anything. So I apologise if I've rambled a bit. But I just wanted to get this one off my chest. And as usual, I'm going to go and get myself a cup of tea. And then I'm going to go and lie down in a dark room and wait for my boy to come home later with his mum, because they've gone out to the park today with some friends. So yeah, I'll speak to you in the next one. And that's me out. Bye.
Well, that was fun.